The sound stopped the room before the words did. Not a laugh this time, a scoff, short and sharp. The kind of exhale a man makes when he's been holding his breath for months and finally gets to let it go. My daughter Renata made that sound sitting 4 feet from me. 4 feet, close enough that I felt the air move. Finally, she said. Finally, something that makes sense. She wasn't talking to the room. She was talking past me, like I was already gone, like the chair I was sitting in was just furniture that hadn't been cleared out yet. I was 71 years old, sitting in a law office on the 9th floor of a building on Peachtree Street in Atlanta, Georgia, very much alive, listening to my only daughter celebrate what she thought was the end of me before the lawyer had finished reading a single line. My attorney, a careful, silver-haired woman named Patricia Voss, looked up from the folder in front of her. She didn't say anything right away. She just looked at the page again, the way a person looks at something twice, because the first read doesn't match what they expected the second read to confirm. That silence went on for 9 seconds. I know because I counted. The same way I've counted seconds through every hard moment of my life, because counting keeps a man's hands from doing something he'll regret before his mind catches up. Then my granddaughter stood up. I need to take you back before I take you into that room, because nothing that happened in the next 20 minutes will make sense, unless you understand what a 16-year-old girl figured out 2 years before anyone else in my family bothered to notice it. My name is Walter Adeyemi. I am 71 years old. I built a company called Adeyemi Precision Metalworks out of a rented bay in an industrial park outside Atlanta in 1988. The same year my wife Dorothy and I signed the papers on the only house we ever owned. A brick 2-story on Redwine Road that I still wake up in every morning at 5:30, still make her coffee the way she taught me, dark and strong with a little cinnamon in it, because some habits are the last thread connecting you to a person, and you don't cut that thread just because it hurts to hold on to it. Dorothy passed 4 years ago in the winter from a stroke that took her in 11 days from the woman who ran our household with the precision of a Swiss watch to a woman I couldn't reach anymore. She was 68. She had never worked a single day inside the walls of Adeyemi Precision Metalworks, not on paper, not on payroll, but she had built the part of that company that doesn't show up in any ledger, the part that decides which contracts to trust, which men to promote, which customers to keep close, and which to let go before they cost you something worse than money. When Dorothy died, I understood something I couldn't have understood while she was alive. How much of my judgment had actually been her judgment, filtered through 39 years of marriage until I forgot where her instincts ended and mine began. And that's when my son-in-law started changing how he looked at me. Let me be precise about the family, because precision is the only thing that's ever kept me from being fooled twice by the same person. Renata is my only child. She's 46, married for 18 years to a man named Curtis Boone, who works in commercial insurance in Marietta and has spent most of those 18 years being pleasant to me in the specific, careful way a man is pleasant to something he's waiting to inherit. I want to be fair here, because Renata is my daughter, and I love her the way you love someone whose whole life you watched get built, brick by brick, starting the day she was born in Piedmont Hospital and I stood in the hallway too nervous to hold her for the first hour. But love and clear sight are not the same thing, and Dorothy taught me that too, usually without saying it directly, just by the specific way she'd go quiet when Curtis talked about planning ahead at Thanksgiving. In the 6 months after Dorothy's funeral, Curtis started showing up at the shop. Not dramatically, just consistently. He'd stop by on his lunch break, ask about the contracts, ask about the machinery, ask what a company like mine, 61 employees, contracts with 4 aerospace suppliers and 2 automotive parts manufacturers across the Southeast, might be worth if someone ever needed a number. He asked with the warmth of a son-in-law checking on a grieving old man. That was one explanation. The other explanation came to me 18 months later, when my attorney Patricia Voss asked me a question over the phone that I hadn't been expecting. "Walter," she said, "has anyone in your family been asking around about the business valuation?" I asked her what she meant by asking around. "I got a call last week," she said, "from an attorney in Marietta. Young man, named Derek Solano. Said he was representing the interests of a family member of yours and wanted to understand the general timeline for how a business succession plan like yours typically gets structured. He didn't give me a name. I didn't give him anything." A pause. "I thought you should know." I sat with that for a long moment, the way you sit with water finding a crack in a foundation you thought was solid. I thought about Curtis at the shop, about the specific questions about valuation, about a phrase Dorothy used to say to me at our kitchen table. More than once, usually apropos of nothing, the way she planted things she wanted to grow later. "Walter, The people who love what you built and the people who love what it's worth don't always sound different at first. You have to watch what they do when they think no one's counting. Patricia, I said, I need you to help me do something, and I need it done quietly. She pulled up a new file before I finished the sentence. Before I tell you what was in that folder on the 9th floor, I need to tell you about Aliyah. Aliyah Boone is 16 years old. She's Renata and Curtis's only daughter, my only grandchild, and she has her grandmother's hands, not the shape of them exactly, the use of them. Dorothy used to fold her hands together when she was working something out in her head, resting her chin on top, going still in a way that told you not to interrupt her because something important was assembling itself behind her eyes. Aliyah does the exact same thing, and she's never seen a single photograph of Dorothy doing it. Some things aren't taught. They're just passed down in the blood, waiting for the right person to carry them forward. She's been my Saturday morning company since Dorothy passed, not because anyone arranged it. The first Saturday after the funeral, Aliyah showed up at the house on Redwine Road at 9 in the morning on her bike, unannounced, and asked if I wanted to go to the diner on Highway 92 the way Grandma used to take her. She was 14. Nobody sent her. She decided, in that quiet and unasked way that some children decide the things that matter most, that her grandfather needed someone checking on him, and she'd made herself available. She's come almost every Saturday since. We eat at the same booth. We talk about her school, her chess club, her part-time job stocking shelves at a hardware store on weekends because she wanted, in her words, to know what it feels like to earn something instead of being handed it. She asks about the shop. She asks about Dorothy. And she asks the kind of follow-up questions that tell you she isn't just being polite. She's filing the answers away somewhere that matters to her. About a year after Dorothy died, over eggs at that diner, she asked me if I ever worried what would happen to Adeyemi Precision when I couldn't run it anymore. I asked her what she meant. I mean, she said, 15 years old at the time, stirring her orange juice with a straw like it needed her full attention. Does it scare you that the people closest to you might not be the ones who actually protect it? I told her the truth, that it was something I thought about often and hadn't fully solved. She nodded, the way Dorothy used to nod, like she was filing my answer next to something she already knew. Then she said something I've carried in my chest since. Grandma told me once that a business is just a story about trust, and the ending depends entirely on who you trusted. She looked down at her plate. She said that to me about a year before she got sick. I didn't get it then. She looked back up. I think I get it now. Dorothy had said that to a 14-year-old girl, planted it the way she planted everything quietly, without explanation, trusting the season to bring it up when it was needed. I thought about Curtis's questions about valuation. I thought about Derek Solano calling my attorney's office. I thought about the fact that my wife had understood something 4 years before her death that I was only now catching up to, and that she'd left the understanding in the safest place she knew inside a child too young to be suspected of holding it. If you're watching this right now and something in the last few minutes landed somewhere true, if there's a business, a house, a life's work in your family that somebody's been circling with questions dressed up as concern, I want you to do something for me. Hit subscribe right now, because I've got more stories like this one, and I tell them for people exactly like you. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from tonight, your town, your state. I read every single one, and I answer as many as I can. And hit that like button before you keep going, because what's coming in the next part of this story is the part that changes everything you think you know about how this ends. Now let me tell you about the 3 months before the reading, and what Aliyah did that I didn't find out about until she stood up in that office on Peachtree Street. The meeting was scheduled by Curtis, not by me, not by Patricia. Curtis called Patricia's office in the spring, saying that given Walter's age, it would be prudent for the family to review the estate structure formally, before anything happened that made it more urgent. Before anything happened, I was 71, my cardiologist had cleared me with a clean report in January, and I still walked the shop floor 5 days a week. Curtis called my attorney's office to schedule a reading of documents I hadn't even told him existed in their current form. Patricia called me that afternoon. He said it was for his own financial planning purposes, she told me. His own financial planning. I told her to schedule it, whatever date, worked for everyone. I told her to invite Renata and Curtis, my younger brother Elias and his wife from Charlotte, my plant manager of 22 years, a woman named Odessa Marsh who I'd long ago named an interested party in the company's future, and Aliyah. Patricia asked if Aliyah needed to be there, given her age. She's been present for every real conversation this family has had for 2 years, I told her. She needs to be in that room. The reading was set for the second Thursday in June, 10 in the morning. 11 days before that date, Aaliyah came for our Saturday breakfast quieter than usual, the specific quiet of someone working up the nerve to say something rather than holding it back. We ate. We drove back to the house. We sat on the back porch in the two rocking chairs Dorothy had picked out at an estate sale in 2011, and that I've never had the heart to replace, because they're exactly where she left them. Then Aaliyah reached into her backpack and pulled out a manila folder. She set it on the little table between us. "Grandpa," she said, "I need to show you something, and I need you to tell me honestly if I did something wrong." I looked at the folder. She kept going before I could answer. "I've been paying attention since Grandma died," she said. "The way Dad talks about the shop when he thinks it's just background noise. The calls he takes in the garage with the door shut." She stopped. Started again. 3 weeks ago I was doing homework in the den, and he had the door to the garage cracked because it was hot out, and I heard him on the phone with someone about what the company would be worth if it got sold off in pieces instead of kept whole, about whether the aerospace contracts would even survive new ownership. Another pause, longer this time. About how fast he could get access to things if you weren't around to say no anymore. The porch went quiet in the way Dorothy's porch always went quiet on Saturday mornings, the right kind of quiet. The kind that lets a hard thing finish being said without rushing it. "I recorded it," Aaliyah said. "I had my phone right there and I hit record. I didn't plan it. I've been sitting on it for 3 weeks trying to figure out if that was a betrayal or if not telling you would have been the real betrayal." She looked at the folder. "I decided Grandma would have told you, so I'm telling you." I opened the folder. Inside was a printed transcript, 4 pages, generated from a transcription app. Because Aaliyah is 16 and thorough, in ways that still catch me off guard. I read every word. Then I picked up my phone and called Patricia Voss. She listened without interrupting. The way 30 years of estate law teaches a person to listen, because the most important information rarely arrives through the front door. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. "Walter, the reading is in 11 days. I know. I want to add something to the documents before then. Something specific, based on information I have now that I didn't have when we built the current structure." She explained what she wanted to add. I told her to add it. She told me she'd have it finalized by Tuesday. Then, more carefully, "The recording, I need you to understand, in Georgia, one-party consent covers a participant in a conversation. Aaliyah wasn't a participant. She was in another room. That complicates things if it were ever meant as evidence." I told her I understood that. "But," Patricia said, "the recording isn't going into the documents as evidence. It's not the thing that changes what the documents say. It's the thing that confirmed what the documents already needed to say. The documents speak for themselves. The recording is just context." "Context," I said. "And context," she said, "has a way of becoming very clear to the people sitting in the room once the documents are read out loud." On the second Thursday of June, I drove to the 9th floor of the building on Peachtree Street. I took the elevator up. I walked into the conference room where Patricia had the table set. Renata and Curtis were already seated. My brother Elias and his wife arrived a few minutes behind me. Odessa took a chair along the wall, and Aaliyah sat in the chair to my left, still and composed, the way someone sits when they've already done the hard part and are simply present now to witness what happens next. Patricia came in at 10:04. She set her folder on the table, laid a sealed envelope at the center, and looked around the room. "Thank you all for coming," she said. "This is a review of the current estate and business succession documents for Walter Adeyemi. Mr. Adeyemi is present, and these documents reflect his current, fully informed intentions as of the date on this envelope." Curtis had the look he'd been wearing since he walked in, leaned forward, composed, a man tasting something he'd been waiting a long time to taste. Renata sat beside him with her hands folded, watching the envelope like it was about to hand her something she deserved. Patricia opened it. She read the first page. Then she went completely still. 9 seconds. I counted, not because I needed the number, but because counting is what keeps a man rooted to himself when the ground underneath him is about to shift for everyone else in the room. 36 years running that shop taught me patience isn't the absence of action. It's the discipline of letting the thing you already set in motion arrive at the speed it needs to arrive. Patricia looked up. She looked at me. I looked back with the steadiness of a man who already knew what the page said, because I'd read it 3 times before I ever walked in that room. Renata made the sound. That short, satisfied scoff. "Finally," she said. "Finally." Something that makes sense. Every head in the room turned toward her, then back to Patricia. Patricia set the first page down without a word. She picked up the second. Read it. Set it down. Picked up the third. She wasn't smiling, and she wasn't in a hurry. My brother Elias, who'd known me 68 years and had been told just enough beforehand to understand the shape of what was coming, looked down at the table. Curtis's expression hadn't cracked yet, but something behind his eyes had started doing the math. Patricia finished the third page and looked up. I need to read several sections out loud, for the record, and so everyone here understands them clearly. She read the first section, the business succession plan. Adeyemi Precision Metal Works was not to be sold, liquidated, or restructured for a period of 4 years following my death or incapacitation. It would continue under the operational leadership team already in place, with a 3-person board of trustees overseeing compliance during that window. The trustees named were Patricia Voss, my brother Elias, and Odessa Marsh, who'd spent 22 years learning every machine, every client, and every contract in that building with the kind of intimacy that comes from actually building something rather than circling it. Curtis was not named. Curtis had no operational role in the succession plan whatsoever. Patricia read the second section, the personal estate. The house on Redwine Road would remain in trust for the 4-year business protection period. After that, it would transfer to Aaliyah Boone on her 25th birthday, with a specific instruction that it remain a primary residence, not sold or converted, for a minimum of 10 years after the transfer. Not to Renata, and Curtis jointly. To Aaliyah, the 16-year-old sitting very still in the chair beside me. Patricia read the third section, the financial distribution. A sum, which I won't put a number to here, set aside in a trust for Renata, administered by Patricia's firm, released in 6 annual installments starting 3 years after the triggering event. Not a lump sum, not immediate, not accessible to Curtis at all, by name, under any circumstance described in the document. By the end of the second section, Curtis's jaw had gone tight. By the end of the third, it was the jaw of a man trying to hold something in that was about to come out, whether he wanted it to or not. Patricia set the last page down and looked around the room. Then Aaliyah stood up. She stood slowly, not for effect, not with the energy of someone who'd been waiting for her moment to perform, with the deliberate calm of someone who'd already made a decision weeks ago and was simply following through on it now. She reached into the tote bag at her feet. She pulled out a sealed envelope, addressed in her own careful handwriting to Patricia Voss, attorney at law, sealed with packing tape pressed down hard enough to show she meant it to hold. "This is for you," she said to Patricia. "Grandpa knows about it. Whether I brought it today was up to me." Patricia looked at the envelope, then at me. I gave her a single nod. She took it. Every adult at that table was staring at the envelope now. Curtis's composure, already cracking since the first section, was failing in a way I'd genuinely never watched a grown man's face do before, not loudly, but completely. The specific unraveling of a person whose story about himself has just been contradicted by something he can't argue with. Renata's hand went to Curtis's arm. Not comfort. Restraint. Patricia opened the envelope. Inside was a flash drive and a single handwritten note in Aaliyah's careful, slightly formal 16-year-old print. She read it silently. Her face didn't change, but something behind it did the same stillness that had crossed her face reading the will itself. She looked at Aaliyah. "This is a recording." "Yes." "Of a phone call?" "Yes. April 22nd. I was in the den. He had the garage door cracked. He didn't know I could hear him." Patricia set the drive and the note down in front of her, then looked at Curtis. "Derek Solano," Curtis said. The name came out flat, not a question. He already knew. "Tack. The recording and the transcript will be reviewed by this office as a matter of record," Patricia said. "I want to be transparent that a recording made by a minor, in another room, raises real questions about admissibility in any legal proceeding. I'm not presenting it as evidence." A pause. "I'm presenting it as context. And what I'll say plainly is that the documents you heard read today reflect Mr. Adeyemi's fully informed and considered intentions. Any expectations discussed outside this office were never based on anything provided by this firm." The room was very quiet. Curtis looked at me. 46 years of Renata's father. 16 years of watching him be Aaliyah's father. 18 years of watching him be my son-in-law. "Walter," he started. I looked at him, my daughter's husband, the father of the only grandchild I have. A man who was not my enemy even though he'd been building toward becoming one for the better part of 2 years. I know what was on that recording. I said, level, no heat in it. Because heat is what a person uses to find a crack, and I didn't need to find one, I already had it. I want you to hear something from me. Not from a lawyer's reading of a document, but from your father-in-law, in front of the people who matter to this family. I built that company for 36 years, starting with a rented bay and 2 employees, and it now puts food on the table for 61 families who trust it to still be standing tomorrow. My wife stood beside me for every one of those years, even when nobody could see her fingerprints on the ledger. I let that sit. You were on a phone call talking about selling it in pieces. The room held the weight of that sentence. I'm not going to tell you who you are right now, I said. You already know. What I want to tell you is who you still have a chance to become in the next 30 days, and why I still believe even after everything I now know that you're capable of it. I looked at Renata, then back at Curtis. That's all I'm going to say in this room. The rest of it isn't going to happen with an audience. Patricia asked if there were procedural questions. There weren't. The meeting ended at 10:52. I want to pause here, because some of you watching right now have an Aaliyah in your own life, someone 16, or 26, or 61, who's been noticing something the rest of the family missed, carrying the weight of it alone, unsure whether saying it out loud is a betrayal or the only loyal thing left to do. If that's you, or if it's been you, put it in the comments. Tell me your city, your state, and tell me your story. Whatever part of it you're ready to say out loud tonight. And if this story has held you this far, hit subscribe and hit that like button before you go any further, because what happens after that conference room is the part that actually made this story worth telling. Curtis called me that night. Not from the house, not with Renata in the room from his truck, parked outside a gas station, off I-285, where he told me later he'd sat for almost 40 minutes trying to figure out how to walk into his own kitchen and be honest with his wife before he could even be honest with me. I picked up on the second ring. We talked for 41 minutes. He didn't open with an excuse. He opened with silence, the specific silence of a 46-year-old man sitting in a parked truck who has just watched every version of his future rearrange itself in front of witnesses. Then he found the first honest sentence he could. I didn't think about the 61 people, he said. I kept thinking about the number, the total. I know how that sounds. A long pause. After Dorothy died, I think I got scared. Scared the whole thing could just fall apart with no warning. The company, the house, all of it. And I told myself I was trying to protect the family by getting ahead of it. But somewhere in there I stopped thinking about protecting anything and started thinking about what I wanted for myself. Another pause. Derek kept telling me there was a legal way to move faster if you ever became incapacitated. And I kept listening because some part of me wanted there to be one. His voice cracked slightly. I knew it was wrong the whole time I was saying it out loud in that garage. I just didn't stop. Dorothy knew, I said, quiet on the other end. She told Aaliyah something about trust, almost 3 years before she died. Told a 14-year-old, because she trusted the girl would still be holding on to it whenever it actually mattered. She saw this coming, Curtis said. Not a question. She saw people more clearly than they saw themselves. I told him. That was true her whole life. She trusted me to catch up eventually, and she trusted Aaliyah to be the bridge, in case I didn't catch up in time. He was quiet for a long moment. I didn't know she could see that far ahead. Neither had I. Not fully. Not until 4 years after she was gone. We talked for another 20 minutes about what the next 30 days needed to actually look like, not in the abstract, but specifically. A call to Patricia to start an honest conversation about whether there was any legitimate future role for Curtis in the company at all, built on transparency instead of maneuvering. A real conversation with Renata, one he owed her before he owed anyone else. And a conversation with Aaliyah, which I told him was his to start, that I wouldn't script for him, and that it needed to be real or it wasn't worth having. He said he understood. He said good night. He drove home. The conversation with Aaliyah happened 2 Saturdays later, not the very next one. Curtis drove out to the house on Redwine Road at 9 in the morning, Aaliyah's time, and she was already there. I made coffee and took it out to the front steps and let the two of them have the kitchen to themselves. I don't know everything that was said between them. What I know is that it lasted almost 2 hours, and when they finally came looking for me, both of them had that particular look people get when something necessary and difficult and true has just been said out loud for the first time. Curtis looked at his daughter for a long moment. Then he looked at me. "She's got Dorothy's hands," he said. "The way she folds them when she's thinking. I never noticed until today." "I know," I told him. "She's had them a long time. Dorothy would have liked how this turned out," he said. I thought about my wife at a kitchen table, 3 years before she died, saying something quiet and precise to a 14-year-old about trust and endings, planting a seed in exactly the right soil, and then simply trusting the season to do what seasons do. She'd have liked how it turned out because she already knew how it was going to turn out, long before any of the rest of us caught up. Here's where things stand today. Adeyemi Precision Metalworks is still running strong. The Board of Trustees is active and doing its job. Odessa Marsh was formally named Chief Operating Officer, a title I'd been circling for 2 years and that this whole ordeal made clear needed to happen sooner rather than later. Curtis isn't on the board. But 9 weeks after that meeting on Peachtree Street, he made an appointment with Patricia Voss on his own, not to challenge the documents, but to ask what a legitimate path back into the business might realistically look like. If he could prove over time, with total transparency, that something in him had actually changed. Patricia called me afterward. "It's the right question," I told her. "I don't know the answer yet. Neither does he. But the right question, asked honestly, is where everything worth building actually starts." Aaliyah still comes by most Saturdays. She's a junior now, thinking about engineering programs, and she told me last week that nothing in her economics elective comes close to what she learned watching a will get read out loud on the 9th floor of a building on Peachtree Street, which might be the most honest evaluation of a high school class I've ever heard. She asked me recently what I thought Dorothy would say if she could see how it all turned out. I thought about it for a real, long moment. Then I told her Dorothy would probably say something short and sharp and a little bit funny, and then she'd go right back to whatever she was doing, because she'd already seen this coming years ago, and she'd already done her part, and the rest was always going to be up to the rest of us. Aaliyah laughed at that. The real kind, unguarded, the kind that sounds like a person before any performance starts. She sounds like her grandmother when she laughs like that. She looks most like her, too, in the moments she doesn't know anybody's watching. I'm 71 years old. I built something for 36 years, starting with 2 employees and a rented bay outside Atlanta, Georgia. My wife planted something in a 14-year-old girl 3 years before she left us. And on a Thursday morning on the 9th floor of a building downtown, that girl stood up and set an envelope on a table that told everyone in that room exactly who had been paying attention the whole time and who hadn't. My wife built that too. She built everything in my life that actually mattered. Before you go, do this for me. Hit that like button. Subscribe, because there are more stories waiting here for you, more 16-year-olds who stood up when it counted. More seeds planted in exactly the right person, at exactly the right time. More envelopes opened in quiet rooms that said something nobody in that room expected to hear. And drop a comment right now. Tell me where in the country you're watching from tonight, your city, your state, and if you've got a story of your own, tell me that too. Whatever part of it you're ready to put into words. This is a community built on people who understand what it costs to build something worth protecting, and what it means to find, in exactly the right moment, the one person who understood it before you did. My name is Walter Adeyemi. I'm 71 years old. My wife planted a seed in the spring of a year I didn't fully appreciate at the time, and it grew exactly when it needed to. Thank you for staying with me all the way to the end.